The Shackled Grooms. The Shackled Grooms. Episode 2 by Cantorin. You again, wanderer. I could tell it was you from the way the door tried to stick, and you shouldered it anyway. The rain's got a special dislike for you tonight, wanderer. You're dripping like you wrestled a cloud and lost. Come in. Mind the step. The floorboards near the hearth are older than both of us put together and twice as temperamental. There, same seat. I'll start to think you've claimed it if you keep coming back to it. Drink? Of course, drink. You asked me something the last time you were in here, do you remember? No, not about the stew. I warned you about that already. After the shouting at the dice game and before old Marta started singing about her third husband, you said, "Why was that man chained to the pillar?" You meant John, the groom, the one we had to mop the floor around this morning. You sat there, watching him rattle his chain and swear eternal vengeance on his friends while they toasted his happiness. And you said, "Is that a local custom or a hostage situation?" I told you I'd explain it another night. Well, you're back. He's married. My floor's mostly clean again. So, let's talk about shackles. You've seen the lake? I know you have. No one walks into this town by accident. Either you come in from the hills and smell the damp stone in the air, or you come from the road by the river and hear it, way off, breathing under everything. It's out there, bigger than the word lake deserves. You can walk the better part of a day along its edge and still not see the other side. The water just goes and goes until it turns into sky. We try to live as if it's a thing that happens to fishermen and trees, but it has fingers, that water, long ones. You heard one of those stories already, I think. Horses and mist and a night when the lake decided to remind everyone who really owns the land. This one's smaller, more ridiculous. It starts with a stupid game drunk men play. Somewhere in your travels, you must have seen a stag night or two, a groom-to-be, a cluster of friends, bad songs, worse decisions. Men who are old enough to know better, remembering very loudly that they are still idiots underneath their new responsibility. Here, years back, they added one extra dare. On your last night before the wedding, you went alone into the forest and walked down towards the lake, just to prove you weren't afraid. That was the whole idea. No monster waiting behind a tree, no secret initiation. Just go out there in the dark, touch that old stump near the bend in the path, and come back again. Then we'll buy you another drink. Men are not clever creatures in groups. You've seen that on the road. Add drink, and we become actively dangerous to ourselves. So they'd stumble him to the edge of the woods, clap him on the back, tell him not to let the trees scare him, and send him off down the path alone. Most of them came back. Of course they did. We'd never have had enough weddings to keep the church roof from leaking otherwise. But not all. Every few decades, one didn't. The old people don't give you numbers, they give you stories instead. A boy with hair like straw who laughed at everything and took the dare with his eyes shut, said he'd smell his way to the lake. He never reached it. A quiet one whose name no one remembered properly, who went into the trees arm in arm with his cousins and somehow slipped away from them without a sound. They found his cousins the next day, still holding on to each other, fingers cramped. Him, gone. No body, no broken branch that told a proper story, no torn cloth on a thorn, just absence, and a path between trees that looked like any other. When that happens once, people call it tragedy. When it happens twice, they call it coincidence. When it keeps happening, even with years sighing in between, they start using other words. They didn't stop the dare, though. That's the stupid part. For every mother or sister or friend who said, "Enough, he's drinking here where I can see him," there was another man leaning on a barrel saying, "Well, it never happened to anyone I know." So the stories grew, and the woods stayed, and the lake lay there pretending not to listen. And one day, somebody, some clever bride, I imagine, looked at her half-senseless groom-to-be and thought, "I'm not trusting his spine or his friend's brains," and she tied him down. I don't know which woman did it first. I wish I did. I'd toast her every round-the-fire night. Whoever she was, she took a length of washing line or a belt or a chain off the stable door and looped it round his ankle and the bedpost. "Just in case," she said. When he woke the next morning, head splitting, unable to stagger out of bed to go and prove his idiocy in the trees, she said, "Oh, that's love, that is." Other women heard, they laughed, they copied, and because we're us, the whole thing turned into a joke. I'll tell you what I told you when you asked about our weddings and padlocks, Wanderer. In other places, they celebrate love with flowers and rings. Here, we celebrate it with hardware. You saw the pillar the other night, that one there, near the back wall. It's holding up half my ceiling and more than half my reputation. John was shackled to it for his stag, wrists chained behind him, rope round his waist, padlock on the lot. Nothing he couldn't fight free of if he truly tried, but enough to make sure he never got further than shouting distance from my bar. He'll tell that story for the rest of his life, how his friends humiliated him, how he rattled the chain and roared, how we all laughed until we cried. He won't mention the older men at the far table who didn't laugh quite as loudly, or the fact that when his bride came in at dawn, hair a mess, eyes wet, she kissed the padlock like it had done her a favor. We hang the chains up afterwards, you know. We reuse them. For luck, we say, and everyone pretends we're just being practical. You asked me why, so let's talk about Jasper. It was about 20 years ago, give or take. I was younger, still trying to pretend I'd grow out of this bar one day and do something grand. The lake was the lake, as it's always been. The woods were still hunched up around it, and Jasper came home. He'd gone off as a young man, work in other lands, carried off by the idea that if he got far enough away, he could outrun the town and its smallness. You know how it is. You've done it in loops. We heard rumors, a letter once, a story from a caravan driver. I saw a man who looked just like your Jasper, arguing prices in a market 3 countries over. That sort of thing. Then one spring, he walked back in through that very door, older, a little thinner, with a coat that had seen too much road and a way of standing like he never quite expected a wall to be where it was. But it was him. With him came Lena. She was from somewhere else, somewhere where lakes are smaller and their ghosts less greedy, I suppose. Dark hair, quick eyes, accent like a song you haven't learned the words to yet. She stood in this very room and smiled like the whole place was a story someone had told her once. They were good together, those two. I'll give the world that much. They had that way of looking at each other that makes single people drink faster. Plans were made. Dates set. The whole town shook out its best clothes and its worst opinions. Now, you must understand, by then, the tradition of tying up the groom was well established. We joked about it. We'd tell lads from other towns, "Oh yes, that's how we show affection here. Rings are all very well, but nothing says I want you alive like a decent chain and a proper padlock." Lena heard us, laughed politely and thought we were mad. Jasper heard us, rolled his eyes and said, "I've crossed borders without papers. I've slept in ditches and barns. I've seen storms that take roofs off houses. I do not need tying to furniture to stop me being afraid of some trees I grew up with. That's pride for you." He'd left, made a life, come back with foreign coins in his pocket and stories in his mouth. The old fears felt too small for him. His friends weren't much better. Some of them had wives who'd shackled them for their own stags. Some had broken wrists from trying to wriggle free. They sat here at this bar, around this very curve of wood, and said things like, "It was different for us. There was more mist then. The lake hasn't done anything in years. Anyway, it's only bad luck if his bride believes in it, and she doesn't. So there you are. You can hear the stupidity from there, can't you? That's the advantage of hindsight and not being 3 mugs deep." The night of the stag came. The place was full. Songs, shouting, bad jokes. Jasper, in the middle of it, flushed and happy, wearing a ridiculous crown someone had made from twisted reed and beer caps. At some point, as always, someone said the old words, "Dare you to touch the path?" He looked towards the door, towards the dark beyond it, then back at Lena's empty chair. She'd gone home early. "Too much smoke," she'd said. There was a moment, I swear there was, when you could see the thought in his eyes. This is childish. I'm not that boy anymore. Then someone sniggered, and pride did the rest. "I'll be back before you finish your drinks," he said. "Save me a slice of cake." They tried, some of them. One grabbed his sleeve, then let go. Another said, "Maybe not tonight." In that tone people use when they want to be overruled so they don't have to stand firm. They didn't tie him. They didn't want to offend Lena. They didn't want to look like superstitious peasants in front of a man who'd been abroad and come back with his pockets full of other people's weather. So he went. He walked out into the night. Down the street, past the last lamps, towards the trees. I watched him go from behind this bar. I could have shouted. I could have stepped out and said, "For my sake, sit down." I didn't. You can keep your judgment to yourself. I have enough of my own. We kept drinking. That's what people do when they're afraid they might have been wrong, but haven't got proof yet. An hour passed. Someone said, "He's probably lost track of time." Another hour. Someone said, "He's probably fallen asleep under a tree." The laughter got tighter around the edges. Someone tried to start a new song. No one joined in. By the time someone finally said, "We should go and look," there was a little group of us already halfway to the door. Lanterns, cloaks grabbed in a hurry, names shouted. Out under the trees the world was ordinary, too ordinary. The path was the path. Leaves, roots, that stump by the bend he'd meant to touch. No sign of a scuffle, no footprint that told you whether he'd come or gone. We walked all the way down until the lake's smell rolled over us. That flat, deep water lay out there in the dark, pretending innocence. Waves making small, patient sounds against the shore. We called till our voices were raw. We walked the edge of the woods. Some of us went round by the farther paths in case he'd tried to circle back and slipped. Nothing. The next day, more searching. Dogs, ropes, wading into places no one liked to wade. Nothing. Jasper had stepped into the trees and simply stopped being something the world could account for. You know that feeling, wanderer, when a road turns and something you were certain would be there just isn't? Now, stretch that feeling over a whole town. Lena stayed through one winter. She went up to the lake herself more than once. I saw her come back, shoes wet, eyes far away, like she was trying to stare the water into giving him up. People tried to be kind in the ways they knew. Food left on the doorstep, offers to fix a roof tile or fetch wood. Stories told of warriors and sailors and husbands who'd come back after years away, just to keep the door open in her mind. After a while, the kindness turned heavy. Every glance said, "You're alone, and we don't know how to fix it." The lake kept breathing. The woods kept standing. No one found so much as a button. One spring, she went back to her own land. No drama, no shouting, just bags packed, farewell said, a last look at the water from the hill. She left Jasper's wedding shirt folded in a chest with some lavender and went. The lake did nothing at all. That's how it likes to win. Since Jasper, we do not forget. You saw John chained to that pillar the other night, rattling away and roaring about his human rights. You saw his friends laughing, his bride hiding her face in her hands and laughing twice as hard. What you didn't see was the look the older men gave each other when somebody brought out the chain and the padlock. That quiet, shared nod that says, "We're not losing another one." We make jokes about it to keep the fear from growing teeth. We don't do engagement rings here, wanderer. I told you before. We do shackles, much more practical. Other towns throw confetti, we say. We throw loop chains round the groom and heap our blessings on the padlock. We tell the groom it's so. He doesn't disgrace himself with someone else before the wedding. We pretend it's about virtue. It isn't. It's about distance. Distance between him and the trees, between him and the lake, between us and having to search again with lanterns and dogs and shaking hands. When the stag's in full swing, the girls thread the chain round his waist and the pillar and click the padlock shut. We cheer, we toast, we take ridiculous drawings of his outraged face. Underneath all that noise, there's a thin little line of silence remembering Jasper, remembering the others before him, remembering that the lake doesn't need a reason, only an opportunity. That's why, when you sit there by the hearth with your wanderer's pack and your storyteller's ears, you see a man chained up like a criminal in the middle of his own celebration. You see idiocy, humor, cruelty maybe. I see insurance. So when you carry our songs away with you, and I can see in your eyes you mean to, and you sing somewhere down the road about a fool on his stag night clanking his chains and cursing his friends and his bride, make sure there's a shadow under the tune. Make sure there's the memory of a man who walked into the dark without so much as a rope round his ankle because he thought he'd grown beyond fear, and the woman who had to decide whether to wait for a ghost or go somewhere the lake couldn't follow her. Tell them the funny part by all means. Tell them about padlocks and pillars, and how in this town we celebrate love with the kind of chain you could tow a cart with. But don't forget why. Now drink up, wanderer. The night outside is thick, and the trees are closer than you think. And if anyone ever dares you to walk alone down to that water after dark, do an old barkeep a favor and let me fetch the chain.